theme, customer-centric supply chain, driven by the customer, delivered by logistics. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're looking forward to the closing session of our conclave where O9 Solutions presents Express Logistics and Supply Chain Conclave in association with Safe Express, conceived and managed by Kamikaze. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in the main ballroom. All our panelists are ready. Welcoming onto stage our moderator for the first session, Mr. Surendra Deodar, Vice President, Head, Materials Management, Reliance Life Sciences Private Limited. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our panelists are mic'd and ready. Please welcome on the stage Head Supply Chain, the Belgian Waffle Company, Ms. Arpita Pople. Welcome. We welcome on the stage Head Imports, Exports and Warehousing, Diageo India Limited, Mr. Ajit Jordan. Welcome. Also joining us in our panel is Head Warehousing, Distribution and Operational Procurement, Del Monte Foods India. Please welcome Mr. Mayur Chabra. We love the fact that all our panelists are putting their hands together for each other, but everybody in the audience, we want you to put your hands together for Mr. Dharmesh Srivastava, Vice President, Supply Chain, Agrotech Foods Limited. We welcome on stage Lieutenant Colonel Govind Tahil, Group Head Logistics, Windworld India Limited. Welcome, sir. Joining us on stage, Mr. Keyur Kotecha, General Manager Lead, E-Commerce, Distribution and Logistics, Reliance Digital Retail Limited. Welcome. Also joining us on stage, Mr. Rajat Sharma, Head SCM, Hamilton Housewares Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Head Contract Logistics Operations, Future Supply Chain Solutions Limited. Please put your hands together for Mr. Hariharan Parameswaran. So we've shared the topic of discussion, customer-centric supply chain driven by the customer, delivered by logistics. Our closing session right here at the 13th edition of our conclave. Our moderator, Mr. Surendra Deodar, will take us through this panel discussion. Sir.
Well, thank you so much. At the outset, I'm really happy to see more number of people in the audience than those who are present in the on the thing. I was really skeptical about this. So that shows the kind of enthusiasm that we will be having in sharing all this with you. Secondly, it was already set at 60 minutes left and now suddenly it has become 75. So thanks to you, because all the panelists have really done a wonderful amount of interaction just to make sure that there is enough amount of sharing with all of you. Well, whenever we talk about customer centricity, of course, I'm sure we're going to have a good amount of discussion because people are coming from all kinds of backgrounds. Most of them, as they introduce themselves or as they talk to you, you'll be able to relate to the kind of brands that they represent. Most of you are already customers of them, except me, because my company, nobody wants to buy any of the product from my company. I somehow come from a company called Reliance Life Sciences, which is a pharma biotech company. And all our products are used only when somebody is terminally ill. So I wish that you never have to buy any of them. But definitely most of you will be looking forward to. So maybe just an opening question to all my panelists and the one who is at the center, probably Govind or GT as he is popularly called as. Maybe you can just maybe do the opening as to what does customer centricity really mean to you?
Yeah, hi friends. I'm Colonel Govind Tahil with Wind Energy Company. I think one of the only odd one out among this lot because the only one representing project logistics. It's not that we are only a project company, we got three verticals, one being the production lineup, the second being the projects, and third, of course, is the O&M, as I call it, the womb to tomb process. That's a word coined by me because you come as a customer, we tell you, okay, you put up turbines and we'll service it for the next 20, 25 years. And wind energy has been a proven sector The windmills that we have put up 23 years back are still going strong. And also it's nice, the time of the day, as Sohinder mentioned, that we're in the KPK time, khao piyo kisko time. So it's good that we have a good audience out here. And trust me, I've been interacting with my colleagues out here. The amount of knowledge which I can learn from them is tremendous. And so I'll just keep it, as I say, keep it short and sweet. To me, customer is basically, if I put it very colloquially, it's oxygen. If I don't have oxygen, I can hold my breath for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Some people with yoga, yoga experts can do it for 5 minutes, but after that you will conk off. So if you don't have this customer, you are not going to survive in today's environment or any environment. And your focus as a customer-centric person, your focus has to be on making sure that your customer is the king. The moment you step away from this basic thought process, you are ready to start falling. And come what may, you are not going to revive. Because today, the variety of choices that the customer has, he is waiting for one slip up from you. And if you have that one slip up, he's going to move away from you. So I think making sure that the customer is the king and looking after his needs and getting after his thing is the basic, I would call it a customer centricity. We'll dwell upon it more, especially in terms of, as you said, project logistics. It's a little different ball game altogether. Thank you.
Great, thanks GT for a wonderful opening. May I request Arpita to just express your views on what does it mean to you?
Customer-centric at the moment is like a positive approach that we give to a customer. It's like a wow factor that we give it to him, an extra mile that we run for it. Because now, being into a new generation, it's all digital, it's all on mobile. So everybody is on a social media stating, looking at internet always, or Google search always, what's hot and what's not, to just keep checking on options and varieties. So customer has to be delivered in a set manner as per his expectation is what customer-centric is mean about. And that's what as a Belgium waffle we do. We try and give them all the customer needs requirements, the chocolate that they need, that's the reason why we are here. So for me, customer-centric is just to give them a wow factor in every delivery that we give to them.
Excellent. At least whenever I have had your products, that was what I was left with. May I request Keyur to just share with us what does it mean to you?
Well, yeah. Am I audible? Yeah. So, well, fundamental objective of any business, right? I mean, be it, we provide the product or services, is to add value to the customer life, right? And that's where customer centricity is, as Govind has said, it's kind of, the extreme importance, right? Whatever we do. So, when I say that, in supply chain perspective, so I would like to start with the customer and work backwards. So be it, designing my network or, be it designing my processes, systems or anything, what I would like to do is I would always like to think as if, customer is sitting here and I am doing on behalf of them, right? Somebody has to speak up on behalf of them that what he wants, what he doesn't want, right? And that's where it's extremely important. Like, just to give you an example in perspective, so like all of you are like supply chain professionals, right? All of us. So we manage and we kind of, daily track our metrics, right? So one of the metrics is OTIF, right? All time in full. So how many of us like, track the OTIF in our companies? I do at least, a couple of them or probably all of them, right? But that's like, our internal metric to me. Customer has nothing to do with it. Being a customer, what I would like to do is, if I would like to design my metric, I would like to have an outside-in approach. So when I say outside-in approach means, I would like to track the NPS rather than the OTIF. NPS, Net Promoter Score. How satisfied my customer are, right? And that's where, even if I would like to design my metric, even if I would like to design my network, my processes and systems, everything I will do keeping the customer in mind, right? Because that's the final aim and objective which we would like to achieve, right? The customer centricity or customer satisfaction. So that's where, I would like to focus myself on outside in rather than the inside out. So
absolutely.
outside in
that's
is something,
really the definition or the kind of
Yeah.
outlook that's required for customer centricity. Well, moving over to Dharmesh, if you can share your views on this, opening this.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm come from the company which is a foods company, Agrotech Foods, and the brands which you would be aware is the Sundrop. Sundrop is an edible oil, and it's peanut butter we have. Other products we have is the Act 2 brand is there. In Act 2, it's a popcorn company. So we have the ready-to-eat popcorn format. We have the ready-to-cook popcorn formats. So for a foods company, the most important thing is the freshness, because freshness is the product, something which is the customer looks at, and if the product is not fresh, then the customer will not buy it. And the shelf life of the products which we deal with ranges from 3 months to 6 months, 9 months. In fact, what we have found is that the shelf life itself doesn't matter much, because when the customer looks at the product and if it is more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks or 4 weeks old, customer will not even buy it. So very important for us is that we have to reach fast to the shelf, not only to the customer but to the shelf. So it has a lot of implications. When we say fast, then which means right from the manufacturing up to the shelf, it has to reach within a certain time frame. And what it has done is that it has cut down the whole actually planning and then the execution cycle. Earlier we had the S&OP, which was a monthly S&OP. We do have the monthly S&OP. We do have the monthly production plans, but then we have to revise it every week. So we also have the mini S&OP, which is for 1 hour. And in fact, managing director of the company, he actually is heading that. And we have weekly S&OPs there, which is for an hour we meet, and then we revise the plan. It also has the implication on the manufacturing agility, because manufacturing has to move from one product to other product very fast. Also, we have a daily planning cycle. So every day morning, we have a meeting of the planners, and if any changes are there, they have to communicate to the factory. So everybody in the whole cycle, which is right from the manufacturing up to servicing to the customer, everybody is on their toes. I think that's the biggest thing which drives the supply chain, and that's the biggest challenge also. And that is how we can keep the customer happy and satisfied. So for us, I think as a foods company, the freshness of the product, that actually governs the how the supply chain works.
Well, that's a great take, important aspect. May I request Mayur? Mayur, please have your opening remarks.
So, I'm ecstatic to be a part of this conversation, because customer-centric supply chain, if we talk about, is a topic which is very relevant to the FMCG industry, or say for any other industry as of now. With the advent of e-com and the advent of new ways of working, maybe it's e-commerce or it's a online platform, there have been a paradigm shift in the customer demand. Earlier, whatever was we were delivering, we have certain transit times, certain lead times, and there was an acceptability to it. But now, as the time is changing, there is a customer demand which is also changing every minute. The variety of products available to the customer, the you can say product life cycle is also changing. So customer has so many options available with them, and the demand of the customers is also becoming very demanding nowadays. So volatility is something which is the need of the hour, and there is a paradigm shift from, say, completely, as rightly mentioned by some of my colleagues, from concept of fill rates to the concept of on time in full. That is something which is changing within the industry, and industry is now looking at that every order which has come up. So there is an old saying which says that customer Bhagwan hai. So that is being, you can say, replicated nowadays. Every single penny of order which is being fetched by the sales team, that has to be serviced, and cost is taking a backseat, but service is taking the first stage. That, to me, that is how the customer-centric supply chain as of now looks like.
Well, that's wonderful. So customer is king, customer is God, customer is everything for all of us. May I request Rajat Sharma? He comes with some very interesting background to give his take.
Thanks. So, guys, I'm
we've been talking about customer centricity for a while now. Now, my take on this is that yes, customer obviously is the most important part of the supply chain. But as supply chain guys, think about it. Like, so I represent Hamilton, and we've heard about the Milton brand. You've seen ads on the television. Must have seen the latest one. Tune kaha ka piya, you know. So what happens for us? They launch one ad, the customers get excited, and so this has really happened to us. So one of these months, we got a huge institutional order, right? So obviously there's a customer, and they are obviously excited about the bottle, and we are excited about the bottle. It's a new launch. But there's a whole set of activities to be done, from import to manufacturing to conversion to printing to repackaging and then to transporting it till the customer end. And nobody knew what the cost of this activity would be for this particular institutional order. Now this is where a lot of us will face this dilemma. If I say that my cost of converting this order is higher than the profitability, is lower than the profitability that I desire, then what is the call that you're taking? So obviously if you go to the CFO, he's going to say, guys, forget about it. Don't even do it. You know, don't beat up your profitability. The marketing guys obviously are going to say, you know, if you lose the sale, it's not going to, you're not going to have repeat orders, and you know, the story continues. And then obviously there are sales guys who are saying, listen, you know, forget your debates, we are dying here. The product is not in the market and somebody else is selling. So I think as a supply chain guy, or as a supply chain professional, there are girls now and I love them. So, but as supply chain professionals today, we're dealing with this whole decision aspect, which was never available to supply chain domain earlier. We are today capable of taking that calls and reaching out to the CFOs and MDs and the marketing heads and saying, guys, no, this is not the kind of business we should be doing. This is, or maybe I haven't developed this kind of capacity yet or capability yet. So maybe let's hold on for a while. Plus, I think what we're also dealing with is a huge number of partners in this supply chain. So for supply chain function, while we look at the customer, we also have the left eye on the partners. I mean, there is a customer who needs X, Y, Z in like less than 24 hours, which I think by 2 years is going to change less than 6 hours, and maybe then they'll say, okay, I need the product to come out of the mobile phone. So with that changing dynamics, how do you invest in partners? How do you create capability in partners? The one easiest way is to go and pay for it. But will you be able to support the costs in a long run? So I think that's a lot that we are talking about when we look at customer centricity, but also look at capability development to be as customer centric as we want to be. So that's my take on customer centricity. Obviously, with technology coming in and with visibility on customer behavior, I think there's a lot to gain from being more customer centric, being more technology oriented. But obviously we have to be wise enough to invest according to the capability development stage, and to know clearly what I'm going to derive out of this technology. Great. So customer is king, customer is God, anything for customer provided. There is a profitability, inbuilt profitability, because that's the only thing which is going to make it sustainable. Otherwise, you are not there, so what will you serve with? With that, may I request Ajit John to please give his take on this.
Thanks, Surinder. And I'm Ajit John. I work for the Alcobev industry. So we have the paradox, or sometimes the curse, of a little better margin than most other industries enjoy, right? But today that also has been stifled out. Competition is furious. What we then imagined as is okay is today not acceptable. Some other industries setting the bar of customer service, customer delight for you. So that's all happening at the same time. But I think I'm going to kind of agree with Rajat, because often customer centricity is a mindset. But the question is, at what cost? And have you built that in your organization also? That means If you give a service guy a choice of cost versus service, what will he choose instinctively? Is what probably top leaders have told him. So we can say nice things, but if everybody in the leadership or down, if it doesn't go down as the same message, people will not act in the same way, because every partner has different incentives aligned. And it rarely happens in a supply chain that all partners have the same incentive, right? And that is always going to be one big challenge of supply chains, because everybody's got local optima to be met, better loadability, better production, better this, but suddenly you want customer centricity. So these things will always coexist. At some point, we will go down to, that is where, if you see 3D printing and all this has come in, to be able to make it more fractal units, where you can service demand more nimbly. And the real question is, it does eventually come back to mindset and people. If people in the organization feel and believe that they're empowered to act on behalf of the consumer or customer, and if you then will behave and allow that freedom, people often will make good choices, is my experience. Now, yes, the question of good choice is relative when you look in hindsight, when you look at the balance sheet sometimes, but if you can hold on to consumers or customers long enough, often consumers retain that memory, although today's world is very fickle, and today what is good is not tomorrow that's good, right? And that we are facing in all sectors. Kal ka jo ladla tha, today it's nobody cares, right? And it's changing very fast. But what I've seen eventually is that consumer goodwill passes on for organizations who have held on to consumers well, that goodwill stays for some time. And that goodwill is something that eventually is built by your customer centricity. It is not just at the point of sale, it's also when a product is defective, how do you treat returns, how do you treat consumer complaints. All of this is customer centricity. It's not just, acha, order aa gaya, to how do I service? That's not where it ends. And that's my take on customer centricity.
Absolutely
Just
interesting.
pitching in, just
Yes,
one-
please, Rajat.
Ajit, I think some very wonderful things. This whole idea of the mindset. So I remember this conversation a couple of years back, and we were speaking to one of the suppliers, a telecom supplier, and we said, guys, and we used to obviously do a lot of Six Sigma stuff back then. So we said, your error levels are high, and we went to his place and we found out that the whole facility has only one QC guy. He said, you can't run this thing with a one QC guy. You're giving me so many errors. What about my customer? He told me just one thing. Sir, I'll put 4. Are you willing to give me 20 paisa more on this? So that's the kind of decision we're facing. And today, it's not even about that. Today, we are saying, put those QC guys, but are they adding to my value? Now, if we don't train them, if we don't invest in their training, how will they add to my value? And if they are to train, then they will invest. And if they invest and they don't get the returns, what kind of a customer centricity is that going to be?
Well, I think great addition. So, ladies and gentlemen, all these panelists have so far expressed their customer centricity aspects to us. All of them are kind of providers. We are all customer facing people. But a common challenge across all, when we talk about customer centricity, when we talk about fast delivery, demanding customers, so on and so forth, it falls on a very critical link in the whole chain, that is the logistics part. So the last word in terms of the opening remarks comes from Hari Parmeshwaran, who is from the Future Supply Chains Operations. Hari, looking forward to how do you look at all of us, including the audience.
So thanks for that. I think a lot has been spoken in terms of customer centricity from the teams on the right side. I think two very clear, he already said, looking at the left, saying that the service provider. Now, for me, coming from Future Supply Chain, as part of our overall culture, our culture statement is basically we add velocity to the customer's aspirations. That's our overall culture statement that we do in terms of customer centricity, and it's not that we didn't have it. We have now launched a new drive in terms of customer centricity. In terms of solutions, in terms of whatever value we add to their supply chain or to the providers or the manufacturer supply chain, we use our expertise and bring about a new solution design in terms of that, in terms of supply, in terms of assisting them on their low inventory models, in terms of assisting them on the last mile delivery, and that is where our customer centricity comes in. It's just not about delivering what has been agreed in the agreement. It's like the words which normally FSC uses in terms of going beyond the contract. Now, I'm not saying that we will go beyond the contract all the times, but I am saying that we will extend that going beyond the contract stuff to help you in terms of your solution design, help you in terms of adding value to your last mile delivery, and also providing you with that enhanced experience. Of course, everything that you want, wow, comes with a certain associated cost with it, which of course Surinder will discuss down the line. So customer centricity, I mean, I don't know how many of you know discrete mathematics. It's like customer centricity as a pointer is always related to a certain amount of cost, but also enhances service on it.
Oh, well, great. It couldn't have been complete without mentioning about the cost involved in that. Well, absolutely fine. I think what has come out of all this kind of opening remarks from each one of us is, yes, we heard customer is the king, customer is the god. So that's the intention or the passion to serve whatever are the customer needs. And as some of the panelists said, that if you have to make that possible, you have to have all the internal processes designed to make it possible. And all this happens, all this doesn't come free of cost. Of course, there is a cost involved in everything. But the moment you have a lot of freedom inside the organization to make those small decisions which are involved in making that thing happen, I think that's what finally makes all of us to deliver that customer delight or customer ecstasy, whatever we are looking at in terms of delivering. And for delivering, the key aspect is people like the future suppliers. I don't envy, I can't be in your position. I'm sure it's a very, very difficult job because they shoulder everybody's responsibility on their head and still keep smiling even at the end of the day. Well, with that opening remarks, some of these things we'll try and develop further. For instance, one question before we go on to that is, we keep talking about customers, but there are many businesses where who's the customer also becomes a kind of question. I coming from a, let's say, pharma biotech company, for me, customer is it the doctor who's recommending medicine? Is it the institution who's buying that medicine? Is it the consumer who's actually going to consume that medicine? So who is the customer can be a very different thing in different cases. Somewhere we are, of course, my take or our take, company's take is also, finally it is to satisfy that consumer because he is going to consume. Other people, you have to add convenience in terms of buying, you have to add certain other aspects in terms of buying, but finally that person has to be satisfied. I don't know how each one of you really connects to the customer, or when we say we have to satisfy customer needs, we have to understand customer needs. Maybe I think you are the most connected to customer in terms of direct product. There is just one step connection with the customer. So how do you in your company really understand what customer wants?
Basically what we have started with is just to take feedback from customers in terms of what chocolate are they looking out for. It depends on the taste, it depends on the texture, it depends upon what crispiness do they want in the waffle, or they want it soft. The entire feedback comes from customers directly to us. So basically the entire production, the entire specification of our products is being diverted in those scenarios only. Every customer, that's what I said, every customer has different taste. So we make sure the taste are being maintained and generalized in a product where the taste comes similar to every customer's. When you talk about chocolate, everybody has a different taste of chocolate. Some want it very sweet, some want it bitter, some want it a bit mild in flavor. So the chocolates are being distributed in equal scenarios where everybody needs are being satisfied accordingly, according to the taste they require. Along with that, some don't like chocolates, so there are fruit fillings that they want. They want something salty, they want something in savories. It depends on what customer wants. The products have been developed in those scenarios there.
How do you take that feedback? You take it directly from customer, you keep visiting some of the stores,
yes,
or you take it from the stores guys, whatever they tell you?
So we have a feedback customer given to each customer that walks in. So every feedback form that has been filled, it's been sent to HO directly.
Okay.
So we keep a track of it, we have a note down of it. Things which are repeated, we can monitor it and maybe change a few recipes which gives a customer different delight. Or maybe we can take that, we have his contact numbers, or the customer that walks in with our contact details, we go and check with him in terms of it is very, very important that we keep changing our recipes, changing our products, which satisfy the customer next time that he walks in.
Fantastic. In fact, that reminds me of a conversation with one of the pharma company's global CPO. She was sharing her experience with us once. One of the I would say very well selling pharma tablet globally. She was just asking one of the customers, old lady who used to use that medicine, take that medicine, and she said, okay, so how is our medicine? Do you get cured by this? Are you happy using this? And to her surprise, the lady patient said, no, I am not really happy. And she tried to find out what is the reason. Well, everything else was okay with the medicine, but the blister is too hard, she said. I mean, the lady didn't have enough strength to just break the blister or the transparent cover and take the pill out. The point is that you really don't know what a customer is really looking out for unless you really spend some time with customers. Sometimes it is indirect feedback, but most of the time direct feedback does really help. Rajat, you want to add anything here, or maybe something?
So we've been experiencing a lot of this stuff via the e-commerce channel. So I think it's a known fact that you have got feedback on the e-commerce channels by customers themselves. But I think what is most interesting is the way AI is playing a role there, because the moment you start as a customer to search up a product, obviously you get products by various organizations and there are comparative charts and there are feedback from other customers. So this aspect of KU's feedback being available to me as a customer at the point of buying has changed a lot today. So I am far more concerned and I have to be far more reflexive. I mean, very, very speedy in response, because this one person's feedback is reaching out to hundreds at the point of their buy. You know, this is changing a lot about how we respect one person's feedback. And I think there's a lot now being invested into getting feedback on the portals, getting feedback on POS channels, and a lot is being done to influence that feedback, which I think is a very, very customer-centric process in itself.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Now, you want to add something more?
I would like to add something on this. While we're talking about a customer-centric supply chain, the brick and mortar system, the main motive was to, you can say, receive the goods and dispatch the goods, and after that, shut it down, and it's all gone. But now, over a period of time, supply chain has evolved in a way that there are a lot of things which supply chain can impact, starting from the packaging of the product, or say from the last mile delivery. So in our organization, what we have started is that we have also started doing market visits. Because sitting in the office or the warehouse, we always is a blame game which keeps on going. Sales will blame supply chain, and supply chain will say that you don't have that capacity to offload the stuff. But this is the recent thing which we have started. While we have a NPD department also which takes care of all the online stuff which comes to us, and they keep on working on the taste enhancement or say some other things. But this is the new thing which we have started, wherein all the packaging guys, supply chain guys, warehouse guys go to market. There's a one-day target wherein the markets are covered, and then we get to know the actual feedback from the customer, listening from the horse's mouth that what is it going on in the market. That is really helping us out in terms of our assortment setting, our changes. Maybe some customer want that there should be a specified product. For that matter, I was meeting one customer last week, and he said, if you can reduce the size of juices from 24 to 12, I will order 1,000 cases. So this is something supply chain can enable in terms of revenue generation also, in terms of changing of the packaging and in terms of looking at what customer is wanting.
Great, great, great take. We see this increasingly happening. There are a lot of people who are actually directly trying to meet customer and understand firsthand, get that first-hand experience of working with the customer. You want to share something?
I just wanted to add something out here. I mean, what they say in terms of the last mile delivery and in terms of the end customers, for us at Future Supply Chain, our end customers are the consumers themselves. So we supply to the stores, we supply food, we supply fashion, we supply furniture, we also supply a lot of e-com products. They are either directly to the stores where the consumers purchase it from the store. So in terms of packaging, we have moved from soft carton packaging to bin packaging, where we move the entire stock in terms of bins to the store so that there is lesser damage of the products, because the damage of the products for us is a non-saleable stock. And the damage of any product that comes in across is usually a non-saleable stock. So we want to avoid the DAD, and we also want to avoid the non-saleable stock. At the same time, we also want to make sure that all the shelves are full at any given point in time. So we do use different kinds of packaging, which I'm not doing a sale pitch out here, which we should probably try it out in case we want to really do it. So that's from my side.
Well, that's great, thanks. Now, I think that actually brings me to the next question, wherein when we talk of suppliers, there are different segments of suppliers. There's a B2B supplier, there is a B2C supplier segment, and there could be different expectations from different segments. So, GT, you are actually the only person who's dealing more with B2B. Would you like to share something?
Yeah, so, there are two different, I would say, ball games, absolutely. Let's first look at the normal, when you go in for your normal fast-moving consumer goods. The shop window for that person who's buying is basically two shop windows he has. One is during the pre-order stage and the last mile connectivity. The pre-order stage is basically on the user interface. How good the user interface is? He's got good filters, he's got comparative prices, he's got, as he said, the reviews of the others. He's got a blue iPhone with a red strap or a red cover. I mean, how glamorous you make it and what all permutations and combinations you go, you get sold on that. The next is when you are receiving the order. Okay, you order through Flipkart or Amazon or anyone, and you have a guy comes chewing in pan and spitting all over your house or outside your house, and you get cheesed off. And you say, is this what this whole business is all about? Or you have a smart guy coming in wearing a delivery T-shirt or whatever, whoever they have tied up with a swipe card, or with a credit card facility or cash facility or whatever you have done it. So your wow factor or your image towards that goes up higher. So basically these are two times when you as a customer are interacting with the site which you are ordered with. You don't know who the supplier is. Now you come on to a project logistics. Look at my company which is into wind energy, or look at, let's say that the Reliance Power has to get in a boiler which is 200 tons weight, 150 feet long, requiring about 20 hydraulic axles. For me, the customer is internal. There is no external customer. And after a period of time, after I have done deep selection of the logistics service provider, the logistics service provider becomes my customer or I become his customer. It's like a handshake. Because the cost of delays or the cost of any accidents or any untoward incidents becomes so high in project logistics that it can ruin you. I mean, you all must have read a couple of years back where that NTPC boiler went down the Kasara Ghat and delay of 9 months. And when they had to take it out, they had to stop the highway for a good 5 to 6 days. That project became a non-starter. So even for wind energy, when I am getting in, let's say I got a wind park for about 100 turbines, and I got 2-3 customers, ILNFS or China Light Power or whoever it may be. For me, my first customer is my production because I have to get the material for them. My second customer is my projects because I have to deliver material to the projects. First to the warehouse or the yard, whatever I call it, and then from the yard to the last mile up to the site. And that is when I have to handshake with the logistics service provider in a very, very intimate fashion. So if I start treating him like I'm the boss and you are dirt, it doesn't work actually in logistics companies. Because as I said, the costs are very high. The costs of failures are or costs of delays are very high. So you have to be very, very careful, extremely careful, A, on selecting your people, whether it be one vendor or 2 vendors or 3 vendors. and then holding his hand and he holding your hand. So it's a very good, I would say, husband-wife where the roles keep reversing.
Well, so there's a nicely explained. There's always a B2C and B2B, but we also have a government to citizen supply chain, a G2C supply chain, if you can call it as. Recently, some of you may have also heard that YouTube talk. There's a beautiful talk about one Gram Panchayat or one Sarpanch or one head of a village in Maharashtra, wherein 100% of the people in that village are taxpayers. All the roads in that village are laid with paver blocks. All the people in the village get tap water, not only tap water for a regular use, they get a 20-liter RO for drinking water every day delivered to their house. And they also get hot water through tap 3 hours per day in their house, of course. They have free Wi-Fi. They get their pulses and their wheat and rice grounded. It is free of cost for them. And I mean, this is kind of amazing thing which I had never heard of before.
And
Honestly speaking, this is customer centricity, a total customer centricity. If somebody wants to make it happen, it's possible. Everything is designed towards making that thing available. And during the process of explaining, all the processes which are already available to people, they have just been made available to them. That's it. It is nothing out of the world. What is that guy is making is something which is available. All the government schemes are only made available to them. For me, it was a very inspiring experience, inspiring, I would say, realization in terms of how customer centricity can magically change lives of the people. Of course, you contrast that with the kind of, unfortunately, with the kind of roads that we have in Mumbai. I think that if that the first one is an example of total customer centricity, second is possibly an example of a total absence of customer centricity, if I can say so. Well, so it can come in various forms. Yes, John, Ajit, you want to add something?
So here's a perspective of how governments are and our perception of governments, right? In Alcobev, we supply a great deal to the government. Government is a customer. Can you imagine? We have government, Alcobev, distribution corporations in various states. And it will shock you if I was to tell you that the government corporations are often far better run than private institutions. Transparency of data, replenishment data, day in, day out billing data. So if you log into a site, you get stock as on date, what was sold out yesterday. And it's remarkable. And while we can all beat the government to death, but where they have the heart to do it, I think they've done it well.
Absolutely.
And wherever, I think also, because alcohol commands a lot of revenue, government has put their heart. In many cases, many states, the government corporations are very efficient. And often it is as simple as send the stock, they will verify it, invert it, and that's it. And even a state like UP, transformation, great transformation the way they are working with partners, right? And so while governments, typically we say government has no business to be in business, but wherever they are in business, I suspect in some cases, they do fairly good job.
They do a phenomenal job. In fact, they are far ahead of, I would say, private corporations. There's another great example of government e-marketplace. If any one of you wants to check, just check on government e-marketplace, which is for all the public sector undertakings. It's a phenomenal website wherein they have built everything that we all talk about. Everything, right, from actually sourcing till the final payment settlement, everything is done in a touchless manner, and government is heavily promoting that for all the public sector enterprises. So wonderful thing to check on that. Now, since we are talking about the GEM portal, it is called as, it's also a technology part. I am sure we are all using technology in making sure that we serve our customers well in various different forms. So maybe Hari, would you like to share something about how you use technology, maybe, yeah, in creating that wow factor for customers?
Yep, that would be great to do that. See, here at FSC, more in terms of automation, we have warehouses, we have completely enabled distribution centers which are fully automated, right from the inbound to the sorting units to the outbound units. There is no intervention of a human hand. So that could be one part of a discussion which my friend here had spoken about, quality part of it. So there is, in terms of product accuracy in terms of wrong product dispatch or getting the product on time to the manifest table where we can actually do the last mile delivery, it's completely enabled. I mean, it runs 24/7. Our operations run 24/7 at 70% of our distribution centers. So there is no need of human intervention at this point in time at some of our DCs. And as we speak, we are also working on majority of the other DCs to convert them into automated centers. So technology plays a major role out here in terms of hardware, in terms of sorting units, in terms of conveyor belt operations, in terms of put to light. The other part of where we actually use and leverage on technology is our the WMS and the TMS, which is completely integrated with our vendor SAP system as well as our outflow SAP system. So we have a complete end-to-end visibility on the flow of it. And going ahead, we are also integrating our TMS with the warehouse operations. So that's also a next step. So yes, you're right. For us, as we have evolved over the years, we have seen that technology plays a major role in supporting customer needs. And I mean, it's more of a speed that is required in terms of technology. And but we still retain the human values of that supply chain to make sure that our assets manage the operations well in terms of doing that, while we also use technology.
Great.
The team here, we can always invite them to see the warehouses in terms of what level of technology you would have seen. Some of them, we have a stall set up outside. A lot of notions are going in terms of what technology we use. It's that.
Well, wonderful. Thanks on that. Keyur, would you like to supplement that? How
Sure,
in
I
Reliance
mean,
Digital you are using it?
Yeah, so sure. I mean, what FSC has, I mean, the Hari has said, and talk about the FSC is truly wonderful. And right now, to talk about, so earlier the use of technology was rare, and it was difficult to implement. But nowadays, with the advent of software as a services, right, SaaS, what we call, right, and the cloud computing, where the scale up of technology is like very handy and very easy. Like if you like to implement any of the technology, I mean, you can typically implement within a probably week or 10 days of time, right, if I'm not wrong. And if you just go out of this ballroom, if you can see, I mean, multiple supplier and vendor, who are kind of trying to help you automate your route planning, automate your tracking mechanism, automate your demand forecasting. Though I am not a promoter of anyone. I'm just trying to say that from a user perspective. But yes, all of those technology can be very, very handy as a supply chain manager. And like right now, if you do the judgmental based route planning, right, route planning, you kind of end up having inefficiency in the system. But if you kind of take the help of GPRS based software, you can actually make your route planning very, very efficient. And right now, the customer are not aware that when your product will reach. But if we'll give them the 24 hours, 24/7 real time tracking mechanism by which you give them the tracking of your delivery, then obviously that will ease out lot of pain in the last mile area as well, right? So probably all of those technology is really very, very helpful. Like earlier there were a lot of switcheroo error, like one product is reaching to someone else and someone else product is reaching to some another guy, right? But as Hari has said that with the automation on WMS, probably we have kind of reduced this kind of error a lot. Probably right now it's like 99.999% error-free shipments are going out, right? So that's where probably the use of technology will be very, very helpful.
That's excellent.
Just
I'm
to-
sure couple, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
No, go ahead, please. Okay, just to give a little bit more of perspective, imagine I mean, at this point in time, just imagine in your mind that you're running a 3 lakh or a 5 lakh square feet warehouse, and the kind of inventory that is there inside that warehouse, which is valued at crores. We cannot afford to have wrong inventory getting shipped to the consumers, because more than about customer centricity, it is about losing that face with the customer, losing the faith with teams like this, losing the faith with the end customers. So especially in warehouses, you would actually believe that from the time the orders fall into the warehouse till the time they are picked and ready for dispatch works within somewhere between 2 to 3 hours in a 3 to 5 lakh square feet warehouse. That is the use of technology that we do in terms of sorters, in terms of sortation devices, in terms of WMS integration, and also maintaining that 99.99% of product level accuracy that comes.
That's great.
So I was just wanting to touch upon this one aspect that Keyur was talking about, which is how easy it has become to start using technology. You know, a couple of years back, we used to be very awed by technology and stuff that people were talking about, but it's not really that difficult as of now. So let me ask you guys a question. How many of you guys have done digital procurement out there in the audience? How many of you have been a part of a digital procurement experience? Yeah. How many of you have been a part of e-procure to cash cycle? And now the last question. How many of you have bought anything on the Amazon portal?
Or Flipkart for that matter.
So all of you who bought anything on the Amazon portal have done digital procurement. Anybody who's been on the Amazon portal and bought something has been through an e-procure to cash cycle, right? You went there, you used technology to search products which are available by various suppliers at various price points with customer feedbacks. You ordered the one that you got tracking, you got payment tracking, you paid online. So we're all doing it today without even realizing that, you know, the been raised already. You know, so.
Yes, of course, yes. I think Dharmesh, you may like to express something about how you use technology in making sure that the customer is
Yes,
happy.
so we have implemented the customer replenishment management system, and it is a tool. We have to remember that technology is a tool to satisfy the customer's requirements and to create a wow with the customer. CRM, which is the customer replenishment management tool system we have implemented, and it has helped actually customers to order all the SKUs. So what used to happen earlier that our distributors, they used to forget, you know, what items they have to order, and you send a shipment and next day again you get a phone call, hey, we want, you know, 2 more SKUs, this has been left out, or, you know, there is a stock out of it. So with the CRM, what has happened is that we have defined the replenishment levels, and also it has helped in the PDP, which is the permanent dispatch plan. So that is something which has happened. So there is a reliability of when the truck will come. So there are customers where we have the weekly cycle of replenishment. There are customers we have twice in a week cycle is there. So that helps that, you know, when the stock is going to come, when the truck is going to come, and the system is doing the planning for them. So in that way, it has helped the customers. But I think beyond that, it's, you know, I'll also talk on the differentiated supply chain. So differentiated supply chain, we have to have for the different kind of customers. The modern retail has a different requirements. For example, let's say Amazon, there's a, you know, the Amazon. So we got a schedule and at 1 a.m. And I said the guys, you know, look at it, whether it is at 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. They said, no, it's 1 a.m. So now, earlier we never had to do this. Now we had to open the warehouse and then we are getting ready. Amazon is driving actually a different level of the service requirements. And the warehouses are not used to it. People are not used to it. So how do you, you know, then plan your warehouses? How do you plan your manpower? The laborers, they are not ready to go in the night. So that is something, it's a different level of requirement which is coming from the different customer. And this is so we have to create now, we are forced to create rather a differentiated supply chain for the customer. Whereas, you know, we have the distributors or distributors. Somebody has, let's say, you know, it's the warehouse which is in the Chandni Chowk, which is, you know, in Delhi, and it's a very congested area. Now their requirement is that the truck should only enter in the night because they don't have, you know, the truck cannot enter during the daytime. So you need to have a different level of, their expectations is very different than Amazon. Amazon has the expectation that you deliver on the given time during the given slot only. And if you miss that slot, then you are gone. Then your cycle will come, you know, maybe later on whenever the time is available. Whereas, there is a different requirement for this customer. Similarly, there is a CSD, which has a different requirement because they don't have a space in their warehouses. So they expect that, you should have your trucks ready. It should be standing out of their warehouse. And as and when, there will be space will be available, they will unload. Otherwise, it might be 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. But your stock should be available. Otherwise, you will lose your order. So it's the different customers have a different requirements. And that's what is the supply chain has to deliver. It has the implication on the cost. It has implication on the planning. But I think that's the requirement, which is different from one hand, which is Amazon, and from the other hand, which is a typical distributor. So that's what is the requirements of the supply, these customers, which supply chain has to gear up and to handle it.
A superb example.
In a way, what has been brought out is not, Amazon is not just setting the bar high on the other side.
Yeah.
They themselves are operating internally very at
Absolutely.
a superb level, which is not possible. You just can't have a bar raised on one side and not do the other process part together. I would at this stage I would like to touch upon the other part. In fact, I was just tempted to look at the audience and find out in case anybody has any question so far, where it's becoming a monologue. Yes, maybe we can take a couple of questions and then move ahead with the other part. Can we have the mic for this lady?
Good evening to all the panel members. So my question is for Mr. Rajat. When I'm bringing a product, there can be two scenarios which I can think of right now. Like people will like which I'm bringing, or I'll bring the product which people like. So how do customer centricity and innovation, they go together? Is it that customer centricity comes after a certain level in a value chain?
So I think the definition or the action plan for the customer centric approach might keep changing, might keep evolving. But I think what's important to note is what is your purpose? When you set up a business or enter a function or take up a job, it is of utmost importance to understand what is your purpose of doing that. So if you're able to develop a product that has something unique, and then you have the ability to market it. So iPhones were not the need of the hour. iPhones have now become, for a certain segment, the need of the hour. But iPhone was a product which came with premium features, right? But they worked so much on it that when people actually started using it, they fell in love, right? So there will be products that are not there in the market, and nobody even knows about it, nobody's even thought about it. So they don't even know their need. So you'll come out with products where people don't even have the awareness of the need. So there's a latent need which you're tapping into. But the customer centricity will come from how you put that product into the market, right? What value are you adding to that customer? At what price point is it available to all the customers? I'll give you an example. Please sit down, by the way. So I'll give you an example. When we think of customers, right, we're all talking about a lot of segments of customers. We're into bottles, water bottles, right, heavily. So we've got plastics, steels, everything. And I was having this very interesting conversation with somebody saying, this TV campaign that we are driving is for the young, energetic, and this and that. And soon, I don't know whether you'll be using plastic or not. What are you going to do with all this investment that you've done? I said, dude, do you even know how much of India is held in the rural population? How much of India is below poverty line? How much of India doesn't even have the capacity to have 3 meals? Do you think he's going to go and buy a steel bottle? Or try and compare your steel bottle with a copper bottle and understand from the perspective of Ayurveda which is better? This is a customer who doesn't even have the money to have 3 meals. Can I give him a bottle at 5 rupees so he can at least store his water while he's going to work? That is customer centricity. I can always look at the world and say that no, I'm going to go green, I'm going to just shove away plastics. What is this man going to do? this man who comes and cleans our places, or maybe he's working at a remote railway line or one of these, heavy duty areas, or one of the project sites with Colonel here, and where do they get the stuff? So that's the way we have to start looking at stuff. Define your customers, define segments, and then develop customized approaches for those particular segments. And obviously, develop products for those segments.
Thank you, sir.
So let me just add one thing. If you have an innovation mindset, you first come with very strong consumer insights. That forms your backbone to develop new and interesting products to design and meet either said needs, unsaid needs, or adjacent spaces. So typically, if you really see in the world, there is, at least for the last 10 years, I don't think there has been some dramatic invention the way it has happened in the 20th century, industrial age. What actually companies have done is they said, okay, this is what consumers want. This seems to be adjacent spaces, nobody's addressing it. How do we address it? If you look at your Tatas, that 1-ton truck, typically they said last mile delivery is growing in India. How do I address that with a normal 5-ton truck? Not viable, 1-ton truck. So if you see now Tata got the 1-ton truck done, everybody's followed suit because they realized that if I had to meet the cost per delivery for a last mile delivery, the 1-ton truck is just absolutely suitable because the parcel size has become small. So then if you see, it's actually a B2B company. They don't sell to people like us. But there also consumer insighting is important and looking at market trends. And that when you fit it very nicely with your supply chain capability is then where your core competence comes in. An iPhone cannot do it all, right? An iPhone today, if you really honestly ask me, lags technically or technologically from Samsung and all the other Android players. But people will still vote with their money for the iPhone. Why? People know that if some feature has made its way into the iPhone, they have had very strong QC controls to ensure that it works. And if they don't think it will work, they will not fire it up. Like the wireless charging, they have not fired it up. They're not confident, they don't fire it up. So that is the reliability that they've built so that people say his innovation is worth the while.
So a lot of us, by the way, have gone very deep into consumer behavior, okay? We as consumers sometimes don't even realize the depth of analysis like Ajit is mentioning. So how many of us use glasses, sunglasses? We use Ray-Bans and Polos and whatever, some of the other brands. And where are these sold? A couple of these retail outlets. I'm sure you guys are aware of Sunglass Hut. Yeah? So they're a retailer of sunglasses from various brands. And then there are people who make the sunglasses and are people who make the frames. I was extremely astonished to find out all these brands, I think the top 5 popular brands of sunglasses, the organizations who manufacture the glasses and the frames and Sunglass Hut are all owned by one single group. It's just they are just giving us choice in disguise, right? As consumers, we all love choice. I want to compare a Ray-Ban with a Polo. I don't like Polo, I'm going to buy a Ray-Ban. There is one single group who makes Polos and Ray-Bans and whatever, and then they also own the retail chain, they also own the one who's making the glasses and the frame. And so a lot of us have moved beyond what the customer can see, which is what he was trying to tell us.
No, see the customer, sorry, Abed, I will just finish off on this. The customer is very different. I mean, each of us sitting in this room here might have another 10 to 15 permutations of what we could want in the evening. Now the question of where it is available and what sort of innovation and solution we use to make it reach you at the right time so that when you go to the particular location, it is there available to you, either in terms of a visual display or in terms of a purchase display. That would add more towards the customer centricity part of it. What you don't see is not in your mind. At least 30% of it. Of course, there's a lot of online, there's a lot of online stuff coming in. You can always see the catalog and you can see what you want to buy. But at the end of the day, we all want to go there and see it online. And if it is not there online, I mean, many of the times we walk into a shop and we see that, boss, ye piece hai ki aapke paas nahi hai? So we just walk out. And it is there somewhere else. So if it is there, reachable, on the stock, on the shelf, I think that will go a long way in solving 90% of the customer centricity problems that is there.
Okay, can
Sorry.
we take one question,
question,
from this
yeah.
gentleman and then wrap with a couple of more questions? I wanted to address the last mile connectivity after your question. Yeah, well, let's take one question. We'll talk about the last mile connectivity thereafter.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Rajat, you spoke about online reviews. And I think as more and more e-commerce portals keep springing up here and there are a lot of people who give online reviews and a lot of people go through, I myself go through all the reviews. But we are in an era where there are a lot of fake reviews and it's become practically an industry in itself. And then you have this whole social media influences and all of those folks as well. So how do you filter out, do you have a mechanism, to all of you, all the panelists, do you all have a mechanism to filter out the fake from the real and take that as the true customer feedback for your products?
Do you want me to respond first?
No.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
you want to go?
No, go ahead.
So I think for us, the one big differentiator in feedback is data. So most fake feedback is not really backed up by data. Most fake feedback is generally just opinions, right? So we do a lot of survey around, is there a similar feedback on another portal or from various customers? Now, I think unless it's a planned sabotage, which is not, I mean, we've not come across a planned sabotage yet, thankfully. But unless it's a planned sabotage, you will not have similar fake feedback on the same product from various sources. That doesn't happen, number one. Number two is that, while we are aware of fake feedback, I think we also ensure that we also have our police on all these platforms. So we're using everything and anything available. We're using crawlers, gnawers, we're using data drawers to find out what's happening, from what sources are they coming. But yes, there is a limitation to what we can do. Yes, there is an opportunity for individual customers to kind of create bad names, but such are the constraints and we have to kind of live with it.
I think that trust really gets built over. It's a very difficult question, I think, for anybody to address to that extent, because there is no real way of segregating the genuine from fake. There is no question really. There is no solution to that. But the kind of experience, as you were saying some time back, that you retain that customer for a long enough period. Over a period of time, you build that trust, that bond, and you have your own trusted reference group from which you share their experiences, and then possibly, I think you understand what is the good, bad about it.
So I can just tell one thing, that assume that for a second that all the customers are telling the truth, okay? Let's assume for a second that they are all true. There is an old adage that says you can't make everybody happy. That's one fundamental fact, right? So when you design a product, you have a product value proposition, a consumer value proposition. If the value proposition is on either sides, the two set of sides consumers will complain. If it is excessively tilted to the consumer, the product will fly off the shelf and the complaint will be no availability. If it's the other way, griping about it's costly, not worth it and all. But if you have designed your solution set to meet a certain segment, some part of it is noise that you should be willing to live with. The more sharper you can design your product to service a segment, the sharper will be the concerns and questions, fake or real. But then if you say, okay, this is what I'm going to focus, that's good enough. See, if you see lions or if you see animals in the animal kingdom, when they go to hunt, they don't look at all the deer and say, I'm going to hunt all of them. When a cheetah picks or a tigress picks a particular deer, it will pick one and run only after that. That's the power of focus. So it is not trying to say, ye bhi mil gaya to haath aayega, ye bhi mil gaya to haath aayega. It's not going to happen that way. So it's okay. If the ones that these are not the consumers you want to please, be my guest, please walk out, no problem.
By the way, we also, I think at least for India, the kind of innovations that we are seeing in today's India, I am personally, and this is a personal opinion, but if I were to take a call on how to manage fake stuff, fake feedback, I would say that, let me just wait it out. If the volume grows, there is definitely going to be one service provider who will manage it for me. At one time we were thinking, if I were to sell 1 lakh pieces, in a week, how would I do that? And then came future supply chain. They said, okay, don't worry, we'll do it for you. That's going to happen.
Well, let's wrap up with this answer for the moment, because I want to really address the last mile connectivity challenge. Maybe Ajit and Mayur, both of you may like to speak something about it. Your choice, anybody can go first.
While we are talking about a customer-centric supply chain, so last mile delivery plays a very crucial role in terms of that how do you address that functionality. As rightly mentioned, that with the advent of e-com, and I have also faced a similar issue because we have just started supplying Amazon, and certainly we got an appointment schedule which was at 2 a.m. in the night. So how do you address these things? So as is rightly said that necessity is the mother of all inventions. So now when we are getting into supplying to these type of customers, we have started working on our backend augmentation, that how do we plan our backend operations, how do we cater our last mile delivery to these customers. And since I represent Del Monte, so we have a target customers wherein we supply QSRs, where the need of the hour is like next minute they want something because they don't keep something at their warehouses and it's all JIT model. Then we supply to a lot of modern trade staff. We supply to Horecas of the world, wherein there is a function which is planned, and if it is a delay, then it has all gone for a toss. So there is a complete backend network optimization study which has to take place for making sure that your last mile delivery is perfectly done and perfectly matched as per the customer expectations. As rightly mentioned by one of the panelists, that you cannot exceed customer expectations every time. The idea is that how do you meet those expectations, and if you're not able to meet, then how do you manage those expectations? For that matter, when we are supplying to a lot of modern trade guys, we are also trying to tell them that boss, these are the SKUs which are not available for a particular period of time, or say for 2 months of time. And these things nowadays plays a crucial role in terms of you're giving information to the guys that this is what is available on shelf, what is not available, so that he is also able to manage that on-shelf availability accordingly. Plus, there is a more focus on cost because everybody is talking about cost and cost. I think there is a paradigm shift from working in complete silos into individual department, and then there's a shift from moving from a particular department to a total cost to company. That is a paradigm shift which I am now foreseeing, and which is happening nowadays. With the recent slowdown, as you said, that what is the so-called slowdown, wherein many of the FMCG companies are now generating single-digit revenue growth. So, as I mentioned that every order which is coming is important for us. We have to supply that, but then it comes with a cost. So, it is total cost to company which has to be addressed. And then, as I said, that network optimization study, and then also working on the complete LTCP model, which is your long-term capacity planning to ensure that your last mile delivery or the orders which are coming has been addressed, and your supplies are on time in full. So this is something which we are working on, and we are addressing these issues.
Great.
So Surendra, here's my only thought, and this is something that all of you all must think of, is that while last mile costs are typically 40 to 50% of your logistics costs often, some of these challenges are our own creations if you realistically look. And if you look at India, India is a very geographically diverse country. Lot of distributors are actually in the chain to do two things only. One is do last mile servicing aggregation, and to put capital in the business, right? Very broadly, this is what the distributor we expect today in India. You talk of any modern trade or any kind of distribution chain, this is typically what the distributor is supposed to do. CNF or distributor, whomever you call it, right? Now, with tightening of capital, what has happened? Where you don't want to extend credit today. So the moment you don't want to extend credit, he will order exactly what he needs. And when he does that, your last mile cost goes up, right? So the question, what Mayur pointed out is very correct. When you look at it holistically by saying what's the effect of doing credit controls, what's the effect of doing very other things of investment and distribution, etc., people don't look at it together. And it's time that people all look at it together, and the CFO looks at the view by saying, I did this is the consequence. Is my cost of capital worth this increased cost? And until somebody can actually come with that unique number at both sides, difficult, because these are all sitting in different buckets, and people never look at it as a single problem. Because credit is finance problem, supply chain is cost problem, right? And it never occurs to anybody here, these are all related, or we created some part of these problems that we are now trying to solve.
Great. I think with 4 minutes left, I had a couple of more questions, but at least there is one question which is extremely important is, we keep talking, and it started from the beginning itself, as to customer centricity, customer service, customer satisfaction cannot come at any cost. So what is it? Can it be at any cost, or how do we optimize that, or how do we weigh it? Maybe a future supply chains, you are into both. Yeah.
I can smile now with the cash flow. They can talk. They can talk.
Sorry.
I said they can talk. I mean,
they can talk. Sorry,
sorry
to put you in a difficult
No, it's
spot.
not about. See, customer center. I mean, since 3 minutes.
Does it come
left,
at a cost, basically? Does customer centricity come at a cost?
Customer centricity does come at a cost. Customer centricity in terms of either your first mile delivery or your last mile delivery from your manufacturing locations to the warehouses, or from the warehouses to the consumer, does come at a cost. It is not that, and it also comes at a volume aggregation. The volume aggregation has to come at the end from your planning, and the cost aggregation comes from my planning or our planning. So it is very important that the cost and the customer centricity are usually synergized by the volume planning and the cost planning. We can do whatever level of customer centricity that is required, but obviously there's a certain amount of cost associated with it, and which obviously we mutually discuss with the customers in terms of planning.
So let me quickly
And
add
many a times it is believed that, or people during the casual conversations, if you have with your professional colleagues, people talk about it, but it ends at a point of time wherein it's going to cost so and so. So it's okay. I think we will continue with whatever it is. Does it happen then?
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen because we just talk. We talk to customers about the solutions, about enhancing the solutions to meet their last mile requirements. I'm adding to what he just added, Ajit just added. And then, the discussion about the cost always comes in. So wherein we bring about a bucket where we say that, let's analyze the cost pattern over the next 6 months in terms of moving from one distribution pattern to a center of gravity analysis pattern, and seeing how this solution can help you. So it's not that we just speak about cost and discard it. We go ahead. I mean, our relationships, like we said, are beyond the contract. So we talk more about in terms of how we can analyze cost over a certain amount of period, both for you and for us in terms of that. And then we go ahead with it.
So possibly this cost, if people start thinking as an investment rather than cost, in terms of sustainable customer centricity, customer satisfaction over a long period of time, I'm sure then it starts becoming digestible, justifiable.
As long as there is positive cash flow, we are good with it.
Okay, great. I think you want to add?
Yes, I would
Last
want to add.
minute, yeah?
When we talk about cost and customers' orders and volumes and everything, it only happens when we educate our stakeholders within and external as well. Unless our within internal stakeholders understand those cultures and educate ourselves, it's very difficult to educate the external customers to make them run through the same model that we want them to. It's end of the day, it's unto them. We are satisfying their needs, but it also applies to us कि हम अब उनके needs कैसे satisfy करें. The way we satisfy our needs internally, they also have to understand कि externally how good they can collaborate with us to reduce the cost as well, to increase the volume and reduce the cost.
Great.
So,
I think
just one point.
with her permission, because it's already
Okay.
time up, but last
point. So the one thing that we often miss, because all supply chain practitioners, we are all very highly analytical. We all like numbers, right? But if you realistically see, if you look at what your sales and marketing colleagues are going through, the cost of a customer acquisition actually is very, very high. And your ability to lose the customer in this transition is also very high, right? While we all see the ground number, how much future supply chain has charged us or whoever, but the customer loss, customer attrition, customer acquisition costs often are unmeasured across the organization. People just take the A&P budget of the company and divide by volumes and say, yeah, hai customer acquisition cost. But in reality, it's not so, right? And the more, and in fact, if anything supply chain must do is sometimes go and say, hey, what happens if I do this? Will I lose this customer? What is he worth? Trade-off. And they'll say, I'm happy to lose him or not happy to lose him.
I think that was a great piece of gyan to sign off on a very, very positive note. In fact, sometime back, Ajit said that you can't make everyone happy, but I'm sure with the kind of enlightenment that all of them, experience that all of them have shared, at least they have made all of us happy, right? If you agree with me, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much for being a wonderful panel. Over to you.
We want to say thank you, sir, with a beautiful memento. So we're going to request you to kindly do us the honors and present a memento to each one of our panelists. Can we please have the mementos brought onto stage? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank Ms. Arpita Pople. Thank you very much for joining us from the Belgian Waffle Company. Thank you. For contributing in this panel discussion, Mr. Ajit John, Diageo India Limited. Our next panelist, Mr. Mayur Chabra from Del Monte Foods, India. Thank you, sir. We'd also like to thank Mr. Dharmesh Srivastava from Agrotech Foods Limited. Our next panelist from Wind World India Limited. Please put your hands together for Lieutenant Colonel Govind Tahil. Thank you, sir. Mr. Keyur Kotecha from Reliance Digital Retail Limited. Thank you for your presence here this afternoon. Mr. Rajat Sharma from Hamilton Housewares Private Limited. Thank you very much for contributing to this wonderful panel discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hariharan Parameswaran from Future Supply Chain Solutions Limited. Thank you. We would like to request Ms. Arpita to do us the honors. And for our moderator of this session, who kept it crisp, who made sure that we were on time, like Lieutenant Colonel said, keep it short and sweet at the start. Thank you very much. Thanking our moderator. We want a group photograph. We've got to remember this, a group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our moderator, Mr. Surendra Deodar from Reliance Life Sciences Private Limited. All our panelists, you all were fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Let's show them that we've truly been a fantastic audience.